Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, Play the Opinion Potomac Watch Podcast. That is, Play the Opinion Potomac Watch Podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot with Kim Strassel and Kyle Peterson. These nominees are going to pose a particular challenge to Republicans in the Senate. Normally you'd say, okay, they're going to have the normal hearings and advise and consent power and avoid it to confirm or not. But this is complicated this year because Donald Trump recently said, and before he made these nominations, essentially demanded that the Republican leaders in the Senate allow him to make recess appointments without a formal confirmation vote. What this would mean is that the Senate adjourns once it first convenes in January, then it adjourns, and then the president would make all of his appointees without that hearing or a vote under the advice and consent provision of the Constitution. Now, recess appointments are not illegal in the right circumstances. They've been allowed since the founding. But you can't recall a case where a president simply ordered the Senate to waive his nominees all through without a vote. Usually the recess power is used in circumstances where you have to evade a president wants to get around extended obstruction by the Senate for partisan reasons. For example, some nominees in the George W. Bush administration had more than 50 votes of support, but the Democrats still would not allow his approval, and they controlled the Senate at the time. So they blocked John Bolton, for example, to serve as ambassador to the UN. Other times, the recess power is used when you want somebody in power really fast for some reason. But this would be a very different circumstance, Kim. It would mean that John Thune would essentially be conceding to give up that ability for the Senate to, first of all, have a hearing, also have an investigation into whatever reports come out about these nominees, and then have an up or down vote. It would be essentially, Donald Trump, you get whoever you want.
There's a question of procedures and norms here. I mean, you are right. The Senate absolutely does have power to do this, to go into recess and for the president to appoint in recess. I would note that historically, the reason for that was because before we had modern transportation, there might be senators off in their far-flung districts not able to come back for an emergency presidential appointment because it would take so long on horseback. We don't necessarily have that so much. Obviously today. Also, this question, look, the Senate, which is a separate branch of government from the executive branch, its duty in this, it doesn't take orders from the president. In fact, instead, it has an obligation to advise and consent, which does involve hearings. And they're going to have to decide if they want to simply abdicate that responsibility and take orders from the executive branch. That's something that traditionally, historically, senators get really touchy about because of their institutional prerogative. They don't like being told by other branches what to do. That's changed over the years, unfortunately, in my mind. And the one other thing, though, I would throw out that everyone should keep in the back of their heads is if the Senate does go into recess, ostensibly to allow the president to appoint one nominee, for instance, or two that have not been able to get Senate approval, he can nominate as many as he wants while they're in recess. There's no limiting principle there. He could name 50 people to 50 different posts and put them all in.
Kyle, do you want to raise your hand for Treasury?
Treasury? You don't think I merit defense, Paul?
It's true. Treasury would be demotion for you. There's no question about that. But Kim's point is exactly right. And we're not just talking about Donald Trump in the beginning of his administration. If the Republican Senate accedes to this, the next time the Democrats have a president and the Democratic Senate, you know that they are going to wave through a real menagerie of nominees that are going to be very troubling. And this power, this advice and consent power, was put in the Constitution precisely to be able to be a check on a willful president who wanted to put in bad nominees. So this is could be a very important moment, not only politically, but in terms of the constitutional order And because I think once it's gone, it's a little bit like Harry Reid, the former Democratic leader, when he said, I'm going to roll through 3 appellate court judges and break the filibuster to do it unilaterally. Well, Mitch McConnell's famous words, you may regret this, and sooner than you think. And of course, they did when Donald Trump came in and made Supreme Court nominees and they waived the filibuster. So this would be a similar kind of fundamental change in the way confirmations work.
It would flip the ordinary mode of appointing people to these cabinet posts, to judgeships, even to lower level slots throughout the federal bureaucracy, because as you described, the Constitution gives the legislature a check on that presidential appointment. That is part of what is built into the Constitution as the checks and balances that I think have made the Constitution and the United States of America such a success and a model for other countries. And what Trump is suggesting here is essentially to flip that and adjourn the legislature, give him the ability to appoint Matt Gaetz as the Attorney General without any oversight, without any confirmation hearings. It would be a limited appointment. Recess appointments, I think, can last for about 2 years.
Not so limited. 2 years is a long time.
No, for sure. I'm not saying that it isn't, but that's the limitation on the recess appointment. But it still would be a real change, and that's part of why I'm skeptical that even a Republican Senate is going to go along with it. I mean, Trump's excuse, his argument in this Truth Social post is that he needs recess appointments to get people confirmed in a timely manner. John Thune, already this week after being elected the new Republican majority leader, is saying that he is willing to grind it out in the ordinary course of business, which I'm delighted to hear. Good for him for saying that. But I think there's still some institutionalists in the U.S. Senate. 2 senators have already made really skeptical comments about Matt Gaetz. There are still old hands like Chuck Grassley, Bill Cassidy in Louisiana, who voted to convict Trump in the second impeachment. So I'm hopeful that there is still some institutionalists in the U.S. Senate yet.
I'm hopeful too, Kim, but I think you cannot underestimate the political pressure that will bear down on Republican senators here, including especially Mr. Thune, who's just new to the Senate leadership. I mean, if the MAGA world will come down very hard on senators who vote no on these things. And there probably even are some of the institutionalists in the Senate who would say, I don't have to vote no if we don't have a vote.
This is why I think it is now incumbent upon the Senate as a first order of business to do a thorough vetting, in particular, for instance, of Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard's history, and bring that out to bear. Because look, I appreciate that the president, and I think a lot of Republicans feel this way, overall in general should be given deference to his picks. But the Senate exists to check and call out if there are real issues there, including questions of temperament or questions of ethics or other things that would make you potentially unfit for the position named. And it's going to be a lot easier for the Senate to make an argument to not bow to a call for a Senate recess appointment if the information is out there and the case has been made to justify why he would not get 50 or they would not get 50 votes.
Well, we shall see what happens. This issue is going to be with us for some time now. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back every day at Potomac Watch. Thanks for listening.